Hi, the main focus of this video is multiplying fractions. But before we begin multiplying fractions, I do want to make sure you're able to simplify fractions first, because that's a key skill that helps you when you're multiplying your fractions. Alright, so let's start off by simplifying the fraction 6 over 15. And again, this is just something that we're going to use when we're multiplying, so I just want to make sure that you know how. Alright, so when you look at that fraction, it is not in its simplest form. And the reason it's not in its simplest form is because there is at least one factor of 6 that is also a factor of 15. So we're going to be looking for the highest common factor, or any common factor, for both of these two numbers in the numerator and the denominator. And I recognize, just to make it super easy, I'm going to list all the factors of 6. Factors of 6 are 1, 2, 3, and 6. Factors of 15, I'm going to list those as well, are 1, 5, and 15. I missed one. That's the most important one. 1, 3, 5, and 15. So the common factor to both is 3. So 3 can be divided into both of those numbers. Now, in order to simplify this, we need to go ahead and divide both numbers by 3. What we are doing is dividing by a version of a whole. So it doesn't change the number. We're keeping the number the same. We're just making it simpler to look at. And so when we divide the numerator by 3, we get 2. And when we divide the denominator by 3, we get 5. And now, if there is no other factor that is common to both of these numbers, then our answer will be in its simplest form, and it is. Alright, so now that we know how to simplify, we should really get started with multiplying, since that's what the video is actually about. Okay, so we have one multiplication problem here, but I am going to show you 2 ways to do it. You should know both ways, so please make sure to watch the entire video. You can choose which way you prefer, but you should understand and follow both ways. Alright, so the first method I'm going to use is just multiplying straight across. It's actually the more straightforward of the 2 methods, in my opinion. It's the easier one to teach. It's not really the easier one to do. Alright, so in this case, we want to multiply the numerator by the numerator. So we're going to multiply 2 by 15. And whatever our answer is when we do that is the new numerator. So we get 30. And we're going to go ahead and do the same thing for the denominator. And so we're multiplying 8 by 5, or 5 by 8. And we get the denominator is 40. So at this point, we are not done, because the question wants the answer in the simplest form, and it is not in its simplest form, as we just learned. As long as there is a factor that can go into both the numerator and the denominator, it needs to be simplified. So if you look at the factors of 30 and the factors of 40, you may recognize that 10 is a common factor. So we can divide the numerator by 10 and the denominator by 10. And we should get 3 over 4. And that's our first method. Alright, so again, that's the easiest one to explain, but I actually think the one I'm about to do is easier to do. So, especially when you don't have a calculator. Alright, so the second method, which we'll do down here so we don't get confused, 2/5 times 15 over 8. I'm doing the same exact problem, just in a different way. Alright, so the cool thing here is if you are multiplying, and only multiplying, you can simplify across that operation. You don't have to be within the same fraction to simplify. You can simplify across. What do I mean by that? Okay, so as you can see, 2/5 is in its simplest form. There is nothing else that we can do to make that simpler. 15 over 8 is also in its simplest form. There's nothing we can do to make that simpler. But there is a common factor between 5 and 15. between 5 and 15, the common factor is 5. And we are allowed to cross simplify. So we can simplify in that direction. We can simplify in that direction if appropriate. And all we need to be able to do that is the operation just needs to be multiplication, not division, not addition, not subtraction. Multiplication is why this is allowed, and not an equal sign. Multiplication makes us able to cross simplify. All right, so let's go ahead and do it instead of just talking about doing it. 5 is a common factor to both 5 and 15, so we can go ahead and divide both by 5. And right here we get 1, and right here we get 3 when we divide. We can go ahead and cross simplify with the 2 and the 8. 2 is a common factor to both, so we can go ahead and divide that by 2 and divide that by 2 as well. When we divide 2 by 2, we get 1. When we divide 8 by 2, we get 4. And so now we can multiply straight across as we did before, but we just have 3 times 1. Oops, that should be an equal sign. 3 times 1 gives us 3. I just multiplied the numerators, 3 times 1. And 4 times 1 gives us 4. So at the end, it's already simplified because we went ahead and we cross-simplified while we were working on the problem. All right, I hope that makes sense.